What's up? It's the Morgan Thomas Show with Big Al. Welcome to the show, Al. We're glad to have you back, and I am excited to talk with you about that Clemson blowout versus Wofford and a few other things that happened this past weekend.
Yeah, all kind of good stuff to talk about. I mean, goodness gracious, it's a Monday night. You know, I'm glad we switched the show here because, look, everything seems to go wrong on Mondays. All the chaos happens on Mondays. It's the day back to work. But at least you know one thing's going to go right, and that's this show tonight. So I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Do we really know that? I mean, I love that intro, but do we know that?
We know. If we can rein in our show host, we'll be in good shape.
There's no reins on this bad boy right here. But again, this is the Morgan Thomas Show. We are live every Monday night now, Monday night, 8:30 p.m. because you demanded it. You wanted it. You wanted to talk with us and be a part of the show for at the beginning of the week instead of in the middle of the week. And we provided you what you wanted. That's what we're here for, is the fans and the viewers. But we give you our opinions every week about Clemson sports, Clemson athletics, basketball, baseball, football, whatever's going on in Clemson, and then the ACC as well. But again, we are available. You can check us out on Facebook. We've got YouTube. Man, we've got the Roar Radio. And anywhere you really want to listen to a podcast, you can check out our show. So we're really everywhere. And you can even check me out on Twitter at Clemson Morgan. And like I said, we try to come to you. Got some questions going right now. White is saying, thoughts on the 3:30 kickoff against Wake Forest. I'm actually kind of excited for it. I'm the type of person I prefer to watch Clemson as early as possible. I want to get it over with because my nerves will get shot if I keep waiting until like 8:30 o'clock at night. So I try to get it over with as fast as possible. But I don't mind that kind of ending towards that sunset time frame. And well, really now with the time change, it's going to be dark by the time the game's over probably. But
Yep.
I don't mind that. I think it's going to be an exciting game. I look forward to Wake Forest and Clemson, kind of being two ranked teams going at it, hopefully kind of help that Clemson schedule out, that strength of schedule, as everybody likes to pick on Clemson about. Yeah. What do you think?
I just don't like the 3:30 games as much. I like the night games a lot, and I like the 12 o'clock. It's funny because I never used to like the 12 o'clock games at all, but at 3:30, it seems like you miss everything. You miss all the 12 o'clock games because you're getting to the game, and getting your tailgate in, and then you miss the beginning of the night games because you're getting home from the game. So 3:30 is kind of stinks for me, but you know what? Hey, I'm going to be in the Valley just like always. So it doesn't really matter. As long as I get to watch my Tigers, I can deal with not watching anybody else, but I do like to see the other good games on the day for sure.
Why in the world do you miss other games? This doesn't make any sense to me. Is that because you're at the Clemson game?
That's right. I'm at the Clemson game.
I have YouTube TV, so I get to enjoy it from my couch. I'll be honest with you. The Wofford game, I did toggle, guys. I did toggle between the Georgia-Florida game. To be honest with you, the more I watch these SEC teams that get shoved down our throat in these primetime games, the more I see teams that could compete very well in the Atlantic or in the Coastal Division. To be honest with you, I don't see much different from these guys versus Virginia or a Miami or a Virginia Tech. They all have problems. They all have, they all seem to, play each other close, and they don't look like they're more dominant than anybody else out there. But we get fed that the SEC is just leaps and bounds above everybody. Just because you're a 1 or 2 loss SEC team doesn't mean you wouldn't be a 3 or 4 loss team in another conference. In my opinion, the SEC has more weaklings to beat up on.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it's same old propaganda, different week. It is what it is. We get the same spiel all the time. And again, we're going to have to prove it in the playoffs like we've done, in years past. So I'm okay with that as long as it's in the playoffs where it's happening and we can show the ACC can do something too. I'm all for it.
Segment number 1 is really the ACC weekend update. I kind of wanted to do around the ACC and start us off with kind of the biggest news of the weekend or of yesterday, really of this morning, I think. Jaron Williams comes in and he beats up on the Florida State Seminoles, but then turn around, Willie Taggart gets fired from his position. Let me tell you a little bit about the game before we talk about Willie. Jaron Williams went 21 for 27, 313 yards and 2 touchdowns. Miami's Greg Rousseau, man, he had a monster night. 8 tackles, 4 sacks, 5 tackles for loss. Really, it kind of all boils back down to that Florida State offensive line just hasn't been able to get it together. Cam Akers tried his best to do what he could. He had 22 carries that night, but Florida State lost 51 yards to sacks alone, which is just horrible. And it ended up being Willie Taggart's final game. 0-5 in rivalry games, losing 4 games, some of those to Clemson by double digits. Well, most of those to Clemson by double digits. And Taggart was 9-12 overall, 6-9 in the ACC. Not a very good record. But the concern that I have and that I wanted to talk with you about, Al, is that he's only been around for a year and a half. So do you think that firing him was the right move, being it so early?
Well, we actually kind of talked about this several shows ago. I talked about Tennessee and Jeremy Pruitt maybe not sticking around for too long, even though he just got there almost. It's the kind of Clemson, or it's the kind of football, I guess, college football culture we're in today. It's what have you done for me lately? I want to win, and I want to win now. Even when you're taking over a wreck that was, Florida State, and they were not in good shape. And again, you saw times where there actually looked like there was some improvement, and then there was other times where they just looked like a bigger dumpster fire than they were before. And I think that's kind of where the main gripe was with Taggart. Obviously, his seat has been hot for a while, which is crazy, like you said, for the fact that he just got here. I mean, this is under 2 years that he's been there, but the offensive line didn't do anything to help itself. Briles, kind of schemed around it as best he could, but it just wasn't enough. Plain and simple, when they lost to the Hurricanes, and who's a team that's been really up and down this year. Obviously, it was seemed to be the final straw. A $17 million buyout, I believe it was. That's a really high amount. It's a lot of money to have to pay to get rid of somebody. I'm not going to say it was the right move. I'm not going to say it was the wrong one either. I think they could have done better than Taggart a couple years ago, and I think they'll make a bigger splash at head coach this year. So, I mean, as far as leading candidates, I mean, obviously you hear a lot of names being floated around here, including our very own Jeff Scott, which I hate hearing. I don't want any part of Jeff Scott going to Florida State. But, I mean, you hear a lot of Stoops talk, and I'm guessing those are some of the bigger names. You hear Mike Leach on the local radio and everything. Has anything been broken yet about that? Somebody said something about and maybe announcing tonight, but I haven't heard anything yet, so I didn't know if you'd heard anything definitive on that.
I haven't heard anything yet, but a lot of those names you mentioned, I also agree with. I don't agree with Jeff Scott. We talked about this. We had a question a couple of weeks ago about what coach would leave first. We do believe that it would be an offensive coordinator coach that would leave first, but I don't think they would leave to an in-conference rival. That just doesn't make very much sense. And Florida State has just got a lot of problems other than X's and O's. Yeah. A lot of I saw somebody say Jim and Joe's problems instead of X's and O's. And Florida State paid a lot of money to get Taggart, which is crazy. They paid $3 million to Oregon to buy him out. They also paid $1.3 million to South Florida to buy out what was remaining of his buyout from Oregon. And then they turn around and they get a $20 million donation from boosters. They claim was not to buy him out, but then go ahead and buy him out for $18 million. So we know that $20 million was we know exactly what that was for. And that was to buy him out. But to me, really the front runner is Mark Stoops. He's shown that he's already coached at Florida State as a defensive coordinator from 2010 to 2012. He's shown that he can do well in the SEC East under Kentucky. And I think he's definitely a name to kind of get him by. His buyout is only $2 million, so it's not that big of a deal since considering they've already paid so much. I really don't see someone like a PJ Fleck joining them. He's just getting something started over in Minnesota. He doesn't have a lot of experience in the South. And so he's had a lot of his experience in Michigan and Minnesota up north, Dave Clawson's name's been thrown around there from Wake Forest. He's obviously built up Wake Forest to 4 straight bowl games and now only a 1-loss team this year. I like another guy, Matt Campbell over in Iowa State. He hasn't, had a 10-win season or anything, but he's had 2 8-5 seasons, and the NFL scouts seem to like him as far as coaching scouts. So I'm interested to see, but I think Stoops, to me, I would probably pick him just because of that history there. He understands that Florida State dynamic, and he's kind of proven himself a little bit in Kentucky. And a lot of people are saying they just don't care who goes to FSU as long as Clemson continues to destroy them.
I heard a lot of people kind of talking online and on the radio that Stoops would be a good hire. So yeah, I don't think that would be a bad hire for them at all. I believe I gave him a lifetime contract. If you go back to our top 5 list back in the day for his beating South Carolina 5 years in a row, obviously blew that this year. So, I guess he can move to Florida State now that his work's done at Kentucky.
Bryce Perkins sets a school record, amassing 490 total yards and accounting for 5 touchdowns as Virginia went in and beat North Carolina in another close game. North Carolina just can't go away in the fourth quarter. They like to play close games and lose them. Yeah. But 38-31 Saturday night. Again, Perkins was all over the field playing awesome. And he's saying we're not done yet. We've got to continue to compete and complete our goals. They are now the front runner in the Coastal Division, but there is still Pitt and Virginia Tech lingering around. The only problem is Pitt and Virginia Tech have to still play each other. So one of those teams is going to kind of take a back seat to Virginia. And then Virginia Tech and Virginia have to play at the end of the year. Al, do you think that Virginia has done what they needed to do now to take over that spot and meet Clemson in Charlotte? Or do you think that Virginia Tech or Pittsburgh might still have a chance, even a long shot?
Yeah, I still think there's a little to be determined there. I mean, obviously, Virginia's in the best shape of anybody right now. But like you said, they have the rivalry week, with Virginia Tech at the end of the year. So I think it's pretty big, starting to play a little better football. But like you said, Pitt has to play Virginia Tech as well. I think I looked up the schedule to kind of see what they had. Pitt definitely has a more difficult road to get there as well if they're going to try to make up any ground. Pitt plays at home versus UNC. They play at Virginia Tech and then home versus BC. And Virginia gets Georgia Tech and VT both at home. So they definitely have the easier path for sure. But in the Coastal, it doesn't really seem like there's a rhyme or reason to how anything goes. So in theory, yeah, they took hold, but in reality, who knows?
I think it would be a good game against Virginia Tech and Clemson. I think Clemson still has the chance to go out there and win the game. It was another, like I said, UNC had a chance. The ball slipped through Bo Corrales' hands in the end zone for an incompletion to tie the game. Man, what a heartbreaker for UNC. You gotta like what you see out of Mac Brown over there in the Tar Heels. I think that he's going to continue to build this team into a relevant team in the Coastal. I would like to see someone in the Coastal not just get beat up like everybody else. I think that will improve the eye test for the ACC to have more of a 1 or 2 loss team instead of having a bunch of 3 and 4 loss teams, even though I think those 3 and 4 loss teams are very competitive. But for me, Virginia has the best lineup as far as schedule. Like you said, they've got Georgia Tech. I think we gotta expect that they're going to beat Georgia Tech at home. Then they get Liberty at home. Not a bad team, but definitely a beatable team at home. And then finally another home game, Virginia Tech. 3 home games in a row is a great schedule for them to finish out the season and then go into that ACC championship. Wake Forest destroyed NC State. They only had an 8.5 spread going into it. And I've been reading a lot of stuff on that game from NC State's side of things. And even the NC State writers were kind of surprised that it was only an 8.5 spread because Wake Forest had been really throwing all over people. And NC State has a laundry list of injuries and doesn't really know what quarterback they're going to use from week to week. But Wake Forest came out and destroyed them 44-10. Now I'm seeing a lot of things out there in the Twitterverse saying that Clemson needs to be worried about Wake Forest. They don't need to worry about NC State. They need to look ahead. I don't think Clemson needs to do that by any means. But do you think that November 16th game in Death Valley is going to be a difficult one?
I don't really think so. I haven't bought into Wake really all year, and I'm still not buying them. I still think they have a decent offense for sure. I like what their quarterbacks are doing. Their receivers do a pretty good job, but I want to throw you out some defensive stats. All right. I kind of took a page out of your book here. All right. And I kind of want to ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot here. All right. Do you know the first best defense that Wake has played this year? Any idea who that is?
The best defense that Wake Forest has played this year. I'm going to say, I'm going to say, I don't, it's definitely not Boston College. Man, I mean, maybe Florida State, maybe. I don't know.
Actually, Florida State was my guess. That's what you said, right? Florida State. You kind of went out on me there.
Sorry. I'm guessing Florida State.
Yeah. Actually, it's NC State. Is the best defense Wake has played. And I really asked that to ask you this. Give me the second best defense they played. Okay? I know you're not going to know the answer, so I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. It's Rice. Okay? Total defense, Rice is the second best defense that Wake has seen all year. Okay, so I'm not saying they don't have a decent offense, but I looked up total defense stats today, and that's what I had. I think Rice is ranked like 62 or something like that. All right, that's the second best defense they've faced all year. I think that's why they're getting some of these points. Okay, so when they rank Clemson, when they play Clemson, who's ranked number 4 on defense, I think that's going to pose them some problems. Okay, and the best offense they faced, Boston College. So color me skeptical that they pose Clemson a huge threat in this game. Now, in fairness, nobody saw the 2016 game against Pitt coming either. So you never really know what can happen. But according to the stats, according to what I'm seeing, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think Jamie Newman is a great player, don't get me wrong, but really all that Wake Forest can do is pass the ball. People in chat are saying, where's their running game? Nobody knows. They don't really have it, but they are able to destroy people through the passing game. They do, on average, put up 510 yards. Most of it is passing, and 38 points per game. But on the flip side, it's kind of similar to that Boston College type of defense or Louisville type defense, where not only do they put up a ton of yards, but they also give up a ton of yards with 400 yards. Yeah. So we had this like device that would shut off all cell phones in the Army. So when you drove by, anybody in that radius, in the radius of the Hummer, their cell phone would be shut off. And so nothing would work for them. And I liken that to the Clemson defense. Boston College, before Clemson comes in, racks up 400 something yards rushing. All of a sudden, Clemson rolls into town, nothing. The game right after that almost gets 500 yards rushing. So it's like all of a sudden their cell phone starts working again. All of a sudden their game plan starts working again. Same thing with Louisville. Passing like crazy, yep. Top 6 offense in the nation, duds. Clemson walks away, they start getting back in the passing game again. I think it's going to be the same thing with Wake Forest. Coach Venables goes in there, shuts everything down, says see you later, and walks out, headed to the ACC championship game. It would be a big deal if Clemson lost that game, because then it would be 2 one-loss teams over in the Atlantic Division, which would be kind of scary. I don't know how that would really work out. I guess Wake Forest would go in at that point, but that's definitely something Clemson will not allow and cannot allow. We're about to head to our first break of the night. Again, when we get back, we're going to talk about Clemson versus Wofford and give out some helmet stickers. And then also, I'm excited for this, Al, our preview of the Clemson men's basketball, their team, their schedule, and their expectations going into this season. We'll be back after this. We're going to get into segment number 2, Clemson versus Wofford, helmet stickers. This is something we like to do, give out helmet stickers, and also a $2 bill for the best performing player or person for the opposing team. But let's get started with the Clemson side of things. I'm going to go ahead and grab this one off the board. And that is Travis Etienne. Man, he ran for 212 yards in a record-setting performance, I believe, passed James Davis in his all-time touchdown record, I believe, and then also tied C.J. Spiller. Great job for that. First Clemson rusher with 3 200-yard games in his career. Etienne actually reached 200 yards by halftime. The first ACC running back to do that in 15 years. So big shout out to our guy, Travis Etienne. Man, I'd love to see one more year of him, but I don't think we're going to get
it. Yeah, I don't think so either. As a matter of fact, we had a talk about this last week. I remember y'all were asking if he was going to, break Priester's record, and I was kind of on the I think he's got a good shot at it bus, and I got a little flack for that. But hey, after last week, I don't think it's looking so bad anymore. I think he's kind of on track to do that. So a huge game for him. So I took Ches Malusi. I took another running back. I like what I've seen out of Ches when he's got his opportunities this year. Obviously, late in the games, but he runs hard. Had a good game this past weekend. 8 rushes, 57 yards. He was the second leading rusher in the game, actually. 7.1 yards average. So not bad. I think the running back stable looks like it's in good hands next year, with the assumption that Travis Etienne leaves for the big show. We'll have Lynn J. Dixon, we'll have Ches Malusi and Michael Duke. That's not even, to mention the kind of guy we got coming in with DeMarcus Bowman, a 5-star running back coming in. So looking really forward to the running back stable kind of being a strength of this team once again next year.
Alan, I don't normally do this, but I'm going to do another offensive player. As much as we have and the media has just beat up on Trevor Lawrence over this season, I had to give one to Trevor Lawrence this year. And I'm going to give it to him. 3 touchdown passes for a 4th straight game. He had touchdown passes of 35 yards to Amari Rodgers, 22 yards to T. Higgins, 34 yards to Justin Ross. Led the Tigers to a season high 702 yards total. Man, in a great game, obviously against Wofford, so not the most difficult of opponents there, but really you got to show support where he does well, and I think he managed the game well. I think he started to kind of trust his arm, but also manage the game and not be too confident. And he really hasn't made many mistakes in the past couple of weeks. So it's exciting to see Trevor get into that postseason form, as people like to say.
Yeah, it's definitely refreshing to see that after some of the, early picks he's thrown and kind of the stuff people have been talking about, that he's not where he was last year, sophomore slump, all that kind of nonsense. It's good to see him have a good couple games regardless of who it's against. But having said that, you are officially banned from helmet stickers from the year. 2 offensive players, that's not how it works. It's supposed to be 1 offense, 1 defense. All right, and I'm taking a defense. I'm taking Jake Venables. I mean, goodness gracious. I remember for the audience out there, I texted Morgan during the game. I don't remember when this was during the game, and I was like, look, if we're doing helmet stickers, I'm taking Jake Venables. It felt like you just heard his name over and over again on Saturday. He had 8 total tackles, 5 solo, 3.5 tackles for loss. It was just it doesn't seem like assignment football, something you have to worry about with this guy, which is, nothing special considering who his dad is. But that's a struggle for some people playing assignment football. They want to go tackle the guy who's got the ball, and a lot of times that can get you killed in an option attack, and Jake Venables was having none of it. His name was called early, it was called often, and he did an awesome job on Saturday, made the most of his opportunity.
I really didn't have anybody else to give it to. Maybe KJ Henry, maybe. I thought he did pretty well too, but I think that Jake Venables just played an awesome game. It's not. I didn't notice that he wears that collar in the back now. I don't know if that's something that he started out with. I don't think I remember seeing him with that early in the season, but now he's got it. So he definitely looks like a beast at the linebacker position, and definitely somebody at the beginning of the season that I tweeted before they got off of Twitter that he was going to. I hoped that he had a breakout season, and he retweeted it and liked it. So I think he was definitely focused on making a name for himself, and he's doing it at the right time, peaking in November. Kind of like Dabo Swinney said this week in his press conference. There's some teams that come out fast. There's some teams that come out slow, and there's some teams that come out average. But the thing is who gets to that finish line first, and that's what Clemson is all about, is getting there. It doesn't matter how you start; it matters how you finish. And it's my show, Al, so I can do 2 offensive players if I want to. You know this. You know the rules. There is no rules, and whatever I want, I make up. The $2 bill, which is, something we give out as we go on away games, but this is something that we give out for our opposing players, and I'm going to give it to Luke Carter, Wofford's kicker. I posted something on Twitter about this. 2 for 2 for extra points, 9 punts. Man, that's a lot of punts. But 396 yards, 44-yard average punt, and 51-yarder. Definitely did better than Will Spires as far as average punt. And he was one of these guys that back in 2013 was a high school player of the year as far as punting is concerned from the USA Today. So he's definitely somebody that I would have loved to have seen in a Clemson uniform. I don't know why he didn't come to Clemson, but obviously did a great job there in a lot of work. He worked overtime against Clemson.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick, and it's somebody, I often overlook the punter in this kind of situation. I'm glad you were able to pick it out because he had an amazing game. I took Demarie Van Cleve. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce his name. I almost didn't pick him simply because I wasn't sure how to pronounce his name. He only had 1 reception, but he made it count. It was for 79 yards and a score. So going to give him a little love for that long reception against a great defense.
And R. White's saying over on YouTube, did the announcer accidentally say Brent Venables one time when Jake Venables tackled somebody? You would know.
I can't remember if that was this week or not, but it has happened before, and apparently he doesn't take too kindly to that.
Well, I mean, you got to give some slack to us guys, okay? We're not professionals or anything. They're not professional. No, they are, but it is confusing sometimes, but That would be kind of, I mean, like I said, I think if you're a guy who grew up in that system, grew up in that family, and you understand kind of how Brent Venables runs a defense, there's no and you have the right build for it. There's no reason for you not to be successful at a linebacker position if you've got a last name of Venables. So I look forward to see what he can do. Clemson men's basketball team plays Virginia Tech in a big ACC matchup. Going to be one of those teams that they're contending against all season, really. One of those mid-level teams that Clemson was actually able to get a win against last year. But I'd like to see them start the season off strong. They played Anderson University, my undergrad alma mater, and beat them. So I look forward to seeing what Clemson can do against Virginia Tech. And then they've got another game, I believe, on Thursday, starting out, and some of their mid-major teams kind of getting that season started. So it's exciting. Got 2 games on the schedule right now, the November 5th and November 7th. So look forward to that. But I wanted to give everybody a preview of the Clemson men's basketball team. Alan, the way I did this for you is I'm going to tell you the team first, and then we're going to talk about the schedule, and then we're going to do our expectations. Okay, so let me run through it real quick. You ready?
Okay.
All right, so you got center, formerly Elijah Thomas's position. Now it looks like you're probably going to have like an Amir Sims, not exactly a center type guy, but he's been taking on that role. When they went overseas and won the gold medal, he was kind of their centerpiece in that defense and on that team. So I look forward to him being that kind of the big man, even though he's not really that big man. Trey Jamison is a big man, but hasn't really made himself into a starter yet, so I don't expect him to become a starter right now to start out the season. So I expect Amir Sims to do that. As far as power forward goes, then you still could put Sims there, but I believe it originally was supposed to be for Jonathan Bear, and he tore his ACL. He should come back. We're hoping sometime in late January, maybe mid-February, maybe. That's what we're hoping for him. He was supposed to be a download guy that could still go out and shoot 3-pointers. But then you have Tevin Mack, an Alabama transfer. He's a grad guy. He only got 1 year left, and he might be able to play some power forward, but he kind of bounces between power forward and wing, small forward. And they're going to be replacing Amir Sims from last year, but Amir Sims is going to be there too. But so he's not gone. Small forward, you're going to be replacing David Scarra, a guy who is known for his defense, not so much known for his offense. You're going to replace him with probably like a John Newman or a Hunter Tyson, maybe a Kevon Moore, maybe a Tevin Mack. You got a lot of options there in small forward or the wing. And then shooting guard, you got Marquise Reed from last year. Got to replace that, awesome player, that star of the team. Curran Scott, he's a transfer from Tulsa. He's got 1 year left. He's a good shooter. He might be there. Alex Hemingway is a pickup that might be a good shooter, but more than likely Chase Hunter is going to start that. This guy's a true freshman that, people talk about Brad Brownell can't recruit. Well, this is a guy that Brad Brownell recruited. There's going to be a lot of guys that are young guys that Brad Brownell brought in that we're looking forward to see, but also some transfers as well. And then finally, point guard. Shelton Mitchell was typically the point guard last year. You're looking at more than likely Alamir Dawes. They did bring over Nick Honor, but he's a Fordham transfer who can't play this year, so won't be able to use him. They were originally going to use Clyde Trapp, but he tore his ACL as well. Might not get to see him until February or March. Because I believe he tore his after Bear. But that's kind of a quick wrap up of the team. Anything stick out for you as far as the team specifically?
We have so much to replace from last year. I think the biggest challenge to this team, obviously, is what everybody is kind of expecting. Not only just losing all that experience. I mean, we lost 4 starters. The only guy back that is a starter is Amir Sims, is our point guard play. We're going to have 2 freshmen probably leading the point for us, and Alamir Dawes and Chase Hunter, I would imagine, will get some opportunity there as well. That's a tough deal going into ACC play for to try to break in as a freshman. And it's crazy that, not only is the first game tomorrow, it's a conference game. Hunter Tyson, you've got to count on him to be a more consistent shooter. They actually thought he was a really good shooter when he came to Clemson, and he has not been that guy as of yet. But if I remember, Gabe DeVoe was that same way. He was a huge scorer in high school, and it took him a couple of years to get going as well. So it's not something that he's a lost cause or anything like that, but it's time to kind of show us what you got. So I want to see some Hunter Tyson ability from John Newman. We know he's got athleticism. We know he can jump out of the gym, but we want to see some more from him there. And as far as the transfers go, Kevon Moore, I think it's going to be interesting to see. A lot of people were kind of, jumping for joy when they heard he got a waiver and was, kind of granted his immediate eligibility. I'm just not so sure that he is to step in and be a solid contributor right from the start. I think it's more of a depth thing for him. I think it's the fact that we have another body that can provide you some quality minutes and kind of get better as the season progresses. I think you're going to rely a little more on Tevin Mack than you will Kayvon Moore. But, we'll kind of see how all the rotation shakes out. I'm kind of excited to see Curran Scott a little more than a lot of people are. Nick Honor's the one, that is waiting on kind of word about his transfer as well. And it doesn't look good. I heard a little bit of information today that they're kind of waiting to hear for him, and they just didn't seem real optimistic about it. So I'm assuming he's going to have to sit this year. But I think Curran Scott, he's a streaky shooter, but when he gets hot, he's good for a few threes a game, which sometimes is all you need. Clemson really needs to improve upon their three-point shooting from last year. I was not a fan of them shooting threes last year. Amir Sims popping out, and he was a little inconsistent there. I think kind of the same has been going this offseason, but I'm hoping some of the others can kind of step in and pick up the slack, be a little more threat from the three-point line, and show a little more consistency there throughout the season.
Yeah, and if you look at the schedule, you've got for November, I kind of broke it down between the months. There's only really like 3 big months, November, December, and January. Well, I guess 4 big months, February as well. But if you look at it, you've got November. They start out with Virginia Tech, which is a team they're going to be fighting for in the ACC. Not your typical cupcake team that they get to play at the beginning of the season to work things out. That was kind of what Anderson University was there for. But then they get some mid-majors. You got November 7th against Presbyterian, November 10th against Colgate, November 17th against the Detroit Mercy, and then November 21st against Alabama A&M. So all teams that I believe that Clemson needs to come out. The best case scenario is before Clemson goes into that Las Vegas tournament, that they're undefeated, that they are 5-0, and then they're going to go in and play TCU on November 24th at Las Vegas, and then they've got Wyoming or Colorado in November 26th in Las Vegas as well. So that is something where it would be best case scenario for Clemson to walk away with no losses, or at least maybe just one loss, and kind of get through with that. Hopefully the only loss to be maybe Virginia Tech, if anything. But we want to see Clemson do well in November. I think they have a team that can do it. I'm very encouraged with this team. I did watch those games in Italy, and I think that they performed really well. Like you said, Tevin Mack's going to be somebody that they can center around. They also want to center around Amir Sims. He's a guy who is, if you look at social media, he's excited about taking on that leadership role. And so I'm looking forward to see what he can do. In December, still some more, average teams centered around South Carolina game on December 15th. Got Minnesota, Florida State. Florida State's going to be a difficult game there. They always play Clemson tough. That's at Florida State. You don't ever want to do that because just Florida State always seems to get a win against Clemson when they're at in Tallahassee. Then you got Jacksonville, Yale, and then Miami to finish out December 31st. Then on my birthday in January against NC State, another game, kind of one of those pivotal games. I believe last year Clemson didn't get the win. It was one of those games where in the last minute or so they had the ability to win the game and didn't. And then it kind of starts out some difficult games at North Carolina. That's always a tough one for sure. Versus Duke, at NC State. Again, got to play them twice in a span of a couple of weeks. Then versus Wake Forest, at Louisville, versus Syracuse to round out January. Really, January and February are your ACC play. And then in March, finishing up with Virginia and Georgia Tech. Not going to be easy for Clemson by any means. A lot of people are predicting Clemson to be have a losing record this year, maybe project around 13-16 overall, with a 7-3 in the ACC is what some people are saying. I don't know. I hope to see Clemson do better if they can win all of their kind of mid-major non-ACC games and then sneak by with a couple of those bottom of the barrel ACC teams. They might be able to sneak by with a 20-win season, maybe a 19-win season going into the ACC tournament. It would be stretching it though. But like I said, I feel like that this team is going to surprise a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually don't disagree with that very much. It's about the point guard play. Can we grow those guys up and can we grow them up relatively quickly? The problem is you got to sneak by that ACC team first before they kind of get their shots against those lower level teams. And now Virginia Tech is supposed to be the bottom feeder in the ACC. I think they were picked 14th preseason. Clemson was picked 11th. So it seems like we would have the advantage there going into that first game. So I'm hoping we can at least squeak out a win and then kind of, work the kinks out as we go along for some of those lower level teams before we get tournament like you mentioned, which I think is a possibility. I think this team is a lot more athletic than teams in the past, so I think they're going to be able to play a little more kind of up and down the court a little bit. I think they're going to get after a little more on defense, which is kind of a necessity, when you like the skill as far as shooting the ball is concerned, and that's something I hope we can do much better this year. But I'm looking forward to it. I think we're going to do better than people think. I'm saying we're going to end up somewhere around, somewhere between 7 and 9, maybe in the ACC, as opposed to the 11th that we were picked preseason. So it's not going to be a bad year. I think we'll end up probably going to a tournament such as the NIT or something like that. But hey, maybe they can surprise us. Maybe they can win a few more. The athleticism kind of takes over and kind of launches us to an NCAA bid. Who knows? I'm always kind of an optimist. I like for Clemson, or to believe Clemson can kind of make it anywhere, anytime, and beat anybody on any given night. So hopefully that's the case, and we see a lot of wins coming from our Tigers on the hardwood.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to go over our Week 11 picks against the spread and finish everything up with our preview and prediction of the Clemson versus North Carolina State Wolfpack game. We'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome back to the Morgan Thomas Show. It's Morgan Thomas with Big Al, Alan Adams. Now, I know everybody was just kind of waiting around. They're like, oh, let me get through this basketball talk. I want to talk about football again. But let me tell you something right now, okay? Don't come at Alan and I in November, December, January. Don't come around January when Clemson has lost games that you expected them to win, but you didn't talk about them, and you didn't say anything, and you didn't encourage them going into the season, okay? I want you to talk about Clemson basketball because we enjoy our Tigers. We want to see what they can do. They're gold medal winners this year, and they played some pretty stout teams over in Europe. So, hey, let's support them now before the season starts. Don't sit here and be quiet about it. And then all of a sudden when we lose, or when they lose, games that you didn't want them to, now you get all complaining and you start calling in. I know how it is. We'll still take your call, though. We'll still take your call. But I just want to say, I warn you right now, get in on the basketball talk because I think they're going to surprise you. I really do. I think they did really well over in Europe. And I look forward to what they can do. Amir Sims is the real deal. He's really wanting to take this team to the next level and be the leader of the team. And hey, I'm backing him all the way this season. So I look forward to it. And it's some great news that Kayvon Moore got the waiver to play this year. Again, you got Tevin Mack. You got a lot of, transfers that are coming in. They're going to produce now. You got some true freshmen. Everybody talks about Brad Brownell never recruits. Yeah, well, you got true freshmen leading in the guard position coming out, starting the game. So, hey, let's back them. Let's support them, and let's see what they can do. I think they will surprise you again. Let's go into our topic number 3, segment number 3. That's our Week 11. Man, Week 11. Yeah. Picks against the spread. Getting into that November timeframe. My dad likes to call it Separation Saturday. A lot of big-time games coming up. And one big one that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. We start out with ACC versus ACC teams, and then we move to ranked versus ranked, and then we finish it all up with the Clemson Game of the Week. So let's get started out. FSU at Boston College. Now, when I did this, because we're doing it on Monday, the spread doesn't come out. And so I get a little confused here about the spread, but I'm going to go to ESPN.com and I'm going to check out the spread from there. And this is Florida State at Boston College. BC minus 1.5. I don't think anybody has said that in 25 years or more against Florida State.
Yeah, after the Seminoles blew the big game against Miami this past week, leading to the Taggart dismissal, no way I'm taking them on the road to, mentally recover and get on the right track. FSU, I think, is going to mail it in for the rest of the season. Give me the Eagles minus the points.
I agree with you there. There's no way after everything that's going on that Florida State goes up to Boston College. We already talked about how it's hard to win road games. I don't like to pick road teams in conference games. I don't like to do that at all. So that was one knock against them. And I feel like that Florida State's just in shambles right now. Who knows what's going to happen with them? They don't even know what coach they're going to get. They thought they had somebody that could rebuild the program and continue going, and now they don't even know what they're doing. So I can't pick Florida State, even if it's a small spread there at minus 1.5 or plus 1.5 for Florida State. A.J. Dillon, David Bailey. After leaving Clemson, game, the next game, they rushed for 414 yards and 5 touchdowns. And I think that BC is going to do the same all over Florida State and give me Boston College to win at home. Next game up, Al, is Georgia Tech at Virginia. 2-6 Georgia Tech, 6-3 Virginia. We just talked about, do we think they've turned and going to stay at the top of the Coastal Division? Virginia is favored, and they are giving minus 16.5 right now. What you got?
Yeah, Georgia Tech actually seems to be playing a little bit better here as the season nears its end. But, Virginia just got the big win against USC, and to kind of take control of that Coastal Division, at least for the meantime, I think that success continues. I think the only kind of obstacle here is if they get kind of looking forward to that Virginia Tech rivalry game at the end of the year. But for this one, I'm going to take Virginia minus the 16.5.
With Bryce Perkins just having a monster game, 490 yards and 5 touchdowns, you got to give me Virginia for that too. Going to be at home, like you said, going to have 3 home games to finish out the season. I don't see any reason why they can't beat the spread against Georgia Tech. Next game is a ranked game, 3:30, number 22, Wake Forest at Virginia Tech. And Wake is giving minus 2.5. I believe it's because, when you play in Lane Stadium, it's not easy to get a win there.
That's very true. Virginia Tech, actually seems to be playing a little bit better when they switch quarterbacks to Hooker as well at the end of this year. They almost pulled out a big win against Notre Dame last week. Even though Clemson needs Wake to win, okay, we need that ranked win, okay? That's kind of what we're all looking for. We want a big matchup in the Valley, 2 Saturdays from now. I think the Hokies pull the upset at home here and take down the Demon Deacons. So give me VT plus the points.
Wow. Well, I can't do that, Al. I've got to take Jamie Newman. He's looking healthy. He dominated against NC State, 3 passing touchdowns. Just Wake Forest has just got an passing game that is just leaps and bounds better than Notre Dame, and so that's why I'm taking Wake Forest. I don't like to take away teams, but I'm going to take them in this case. Next up is Louisville at Miami. 5-3 Louisville against a 5-4 Miami. Miami is giving 6. So can Miami win by 7?
Look, I believe it was kind of during the picks last week where I was talking about Miami being on a roller coaster of a year, and they didn't take the dive, that I wanted them to last week. It just didn't happen. Obviously, they beat Florida State. So I'm going to go with my gut and say the dive happens this week against Louisville, okay? And the offense scores some points on the road after they had a bye week. I honestly think Louisville's got a good chance of pulling the upset here, so I'm going to take Louisville plus the 5 since I think they win outright.
I like that. I'm going with Miami actually in this case because I think that I got to go with the home team. Miami seems to do better at home, and I'm going to go with them coming off a big win against Florida State as well. They're still not a good team, but they have a winning record, and I think they're going to become bowl eligible after this win for sure this weekend. Next up, number 15, Notre Dame, that team we were just talking about. Versus or at Duke, and Notre Dame needed a 7-yard run to win with 29 seconds left against Virginia Tech. Who you got there? Well, let me give you the spread. Notre Dame minus 8.
Minus
so got to have a touchdown and a field goal there.
Okay, look, the Blue Devils, have had a decent season. Notre Dame obviously kind of coming off weeks where they were destroyed by Michigan and barely escaped a bad VT team. I think the Blue Devils have a chance for the upset coming off the bye week here. I'm not sure that they get it, but I am going to take Duke plus the 8 points, and that kills me to say that.
I think Notre Dame's going to rebound. I think that, with that scare, I feel like they almost let Michigan beat them twice. And so that's why I'm going to give them a little bit of a pass. And I think that Notre Dame's going to go to Duke and kind of show them up and rebound and win by more than 8. So give me Notre Dame in that case. That's it for our ACC games, minus the Clemson game. We're going to talk about that after this. But some big games going on. You got number 5, Penn State at number 13, Minnesota. Now, this is one that they refuse to do a night game, and it's going to be like 33 degrees. Maybe even maybe even 20 degrees by the end of the game, and that's starting at noon. So definitely a cold one between those two teams. What you got?
Is the spread plus 6? I saw Minnesota plus 6, Penn State minus 6. Is that still the case?
I probably should give you the spread.
Yeah, that's fair.
I've got 6.5 Penn State minus
6.5 Penn State.
Minus 6.5 Penn State.
All right. So I like what I've seen from Penn State so far this year. Minnesota has largely benefited from what I see as a pretty weak schedule for the most part. And they struggled to win in the beginning. They've been playing on much better as of late, blowing people out as of late. But this is the time of year where these upsets happen. I think you'll notice tonight I've gone with a lot of teams plus the points, which could hurt me big time. And, when I've got a little lead in the pick'em segment. But I think Penn State's a superior team. But give me the Golden Gophers to cover here. I like this time of year. It's so much fun because there's so many upsets, as long as they're not having it in Clemson, of course. But I'm going to take Minnesota plus the 6.5 points.
So Sean Clifford and KJ Hamler just dominated and destroyed Michigan, and I think that they're going to continue to do well. Minnesota has a really good offense, but I think Penn State has a pretty good defense. In that case, they're only allowing 68.4 yards rushing per game. And I love to take those dominant rushing defenses, even though it's an away game. So they lose a little bit because it's an away game, but it's an early away game. They gain a ton for being a really great rushing defense and only allowing 9.6 points per game. And like you said, Penn State has played a better schedule a more difficult schedule as far as Big Ten goes. Minnesota's kind of had that luxury of not having as many difficult games as Penn State has. Penn State has come out undefeated, and so I've got to go with Penn State in this case minus the points. That's what I'm going with now. Next up is kind of let's skip this one. We'll go to the next one. Then we'll do the big game. The big game, The next up game is number 18 Iowa versus number 16 Wisconsin, and that's a 4 p.m. game. There's really the late game is the Clemson game, which is kind of interesting. There's no ranked versus ranked late game. All these games are early or earlier, but you've got Iowa versus Wisconsin. Iowa 6-2, Wisconsin 6-2, Wisconsin minus 8.5. What you got?
Look, the Badgers have burned me a couple times this year. None worse than their last game when they got just obliterated by Ohio State. I really thought they were going to put up a fight there and have a chance to pull the upset. Obviously, I was way wrong on that. But, however, I think they put it together this week, get back on track. I'm going to take Wisconsin minus the points.
Okay, Wisconsin minus the points. Their two ranked teams had a lot of success in September and peaked in September. And so I think that Wisconsin really needs to right the ship. They've lost 2 straight road games. This is going to be their homecoming after those 2 straight road games. I don't see how Iowa's any better than any team in the ACC. I really don't see how Wisconsin's any better than the ACC, but they're those teams that have those 2 losses that somehow are ranked over 3-loss ACC teams. They seem to be just as good or just as bad as any of those teams, but I'm going to take Wisconsin as well. I think they're going to get things together going into their home game, and I think they're going to get Jonathan Taylor back on track. And Iowa just always struggles to seem to score, and so I'm going with Wisconsin in that case. Next up, this is the game that everybody's been looking forward to. I think everybody already knows who I'm going to pick based on the past couple of weeks that I've already talked about it. But 8-0, number 1 LSU at really should be number 4 Alabama, but number 2 Alabama for ratings purposes. 8-0 Alabama. First big road test for LSU. They've won 2 big games in the SEC, but they were both home games. This one, my man, is not. Alabama minus 6.5. I was debating this at church this Sunday about what the spread would be with a couple of guys at church, and we all kind of agreed it was going to be that 1 touchdown because a field goal in Tuscaloosa is not enough for me to pick LSU. You start giving me 7 points, though, now I'm getting interested. If it was 11 points, I would definitely take LSU. But what you got with 6.5 right now?
Look, obviously the elephant in the room here, and that pun intended, by the way, is will Tua play? Okay. Is Tua going to play? If he plays, is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be 100% healthy? Probably not. I don't see how he could be after the little surgery he had done. I think the LSU team matches up a lot better with the Tide than in past years due to their offense and kind of the spread they're running. They're able to put up a lot more points. At the beginning of the year, I said Bama wins this game mainly due to the fact that it was in Tuscaloosa. But I think the fact that Tua may or may not be 100%, I'm saying he won't be, or may not even play, pushes this in LSU's favor. So give me the Tigers plus the points.
I'm taking LSU all the way, especially with 6.5. If it gets any closer, I might change my mind. I like to change my mind right before game time. That's kind of how I do my picks. If you play with us over on the Yahoo Pick'em, you'll notice that some of my picks I said on air have changed by the time the game gets around. That's because it's Monday. I haven't had a time to really just set on these things. And so, I'm not really sure, even though I'm glad I kept my Georgia pick from last week. Alan, I went 10 for 10 out of the 16 games we picked. I went 10 for 10 before 7 o'clock. And then after the 7 o'clock game started, I went 1-5.
Yeah.
I just got destroyed in those late games last week. So hopefully I'll do better this week, but I'm going to get LSU. I've been picking LSU since the beginning of the season. I circled this part on my calendar because it's a big game. I look forward to watching that game. Al, you'll have to, I guess, get text messages from me. Cause you'll probably be tailgating or something. I don't know what you'll be doing, but, I don't know what people do when they go to games. What do you do when you go to games?
Well, it really depends on the game and the time. To be honest with you, sometimes we go do a little tailgate, and sometimes I go get some good Raising Cane's chicken from a place on campus. It's kind of cool. I hang out with the Barnett crew at their tailgate some as well. So it's a good time. But I like to get to the games honestly as late as possible because I like to catch what I can of the early games and then get home to see the late games. So I'm a big fan of having noon games now, and I never was a fan of that ever. But I like to get there and get back, and I can see the rest of the action for the rest of the day.
All right, that leads us into our final pick of the night, Clemson Tigers going to the North Carolina State Wolfpack. 4-4 Wolfpack, 9-0 Clemson Tigers, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. You've got Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne versus Matthew McKay and Zonovan Knight. What do you think, Al? It is minus 31.5. I think some people were saying it'd probably be minus 48, but it's not minus 48, minus 31.5. What you think?
Yeah, NC State has been blown out in their past two games, by BC and Wake Forest. It has not looked pretty for them at all. Look, I think this is one of the worst teams Clemson has played to date, but a night game, at NC State can be a dangerous thing, as we've seen in past years. Now, I just don't think, NC State has what it takes to keep Clemson close. Even with what I imagine will be a pretty crazy environment up there. They do a good job up there sometimes, especially at night. North Carolina State is 90th in pass defense, 27th in rush defense, which is not too bad. I think they're right behind Clemson in that category. But I think Lawrence continues to play well. I think Etienne busts another couple big runs, and our Tiger receivers kind of, go crazy and cruise to a victory against the Wolfpack. I'm taking Clemson minus 31.5. My final score prediction, Clemson 55, NC State 13.
There's another 55-teen pick. You've been saying that for like 3 or 4 weeks in a row.
One of these times it's going to be right.
And you've been pretty close, though. I think I saw a stat that said that Clemson hasn't lost a game by less than 31 since that scare. And so they've really turned things around. I said I believe Matthew Mack or Matthew McKay, he actually is no longer their starting quarterback. Last week they played Wake Forest with Devin Leary, a freshman there, and he didn't have very good of a night. 17 for 45, 149 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. I was reading some articles from the NC State SB Nation blog or website, and man, it just like they don't expect NC State to be holding any kind of ground by the second quarter. They think it's going to be a domination right after the first 15 minutes. The game's going to be over. And there's really no analysis right now between Clemson versus NC State on their website because they think there's just no way that they can even hang with them. And I tend to agree in this case. Clemson's got the way better defense. They got a way better offense. And and with the fact that they're on average beating people by around 31 points, I'm going to give them the win as well, plus the points. So you got to take Clemson in that case. So look forward to Clemson being 10-0, on track to be undefeated again in the regular season with just 3 games left. You've got NC State, you've got Wake Forest, and then you've got South Carolina, that big rivalry game, and Willie B will be excited for that one too. Al, what if we go to Buffalo Wild Wings and do the show from Buffalo Wild Wings during the game, since it's an away game? What do you think about that?
During the South Carolina game?
Yeah, why don't we set up our gig, all our equipment in the restaurant? What do you think about that?
Well, I got to tell you, then we were not going to be able to set it up on the big 9 by 16 foot screen at my dad's house. So that's kind of going to be a big bummer. You got to worry about the crowd noise at Buffalo Wild Wings too. Obviously, the fans are going to be trying to rush us as we do the show. You know how that goes, signing autographs and whatnot. So we got to kind of be careful where we do these games. But I'm sure it would be a fun environment to do a game in.
Maybe we'll work something out. I've been wanting to do something on location. Maybe we do something on location at your dad's house. Does he have good internet? I hope he does.
Sure.
But we appreciate your support and watching the show. Man, that's it for us. 13 people watching over on YouTube. How many you got over on Facebook, Alan, as we finish up the night?
I got 12 still hanging with us on Facebook. We have a lot of people kind of getting in and give us their opinions on the spread picks. That's one of our best segments. It's one of our most popular segments. People love the picks against the spread. They love to hear all that, and they love to give us their take, which is really good. So I want to encourage these people again, on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you're watching, like the show, share the show, subscribe to the show. Okay, do it all whatever platform you're on. Follow the show. I think if you're on Facebook. Do it all. That's how we kind of get the word out. We want to engage as many people as possible. We obviously want to hear what you have to say. We want you to give us your opinion, ask us any questions. Please don't hesitate to call in the Buffalo Wild Wings hotline and kind of put Morgan and me on the spot so we can kind of give you our opinions and without having time to research it. That's when it's the most fun, right? So kind of get in with us. Be sure to kind of always track us and we want to hear more from you guys. So please, we really appreciate all the support that you've given us so far, and hopefully we'll continue to do so.
That's it for us tonight. I hope you enjoyed watching and listening to the show. Check us out over on our Facebook page, our YouTube page, the roar.radio website, and anywhere you can listen to podcasts. You can follow us over on Twitter at Clemson Morgan. That's it for this week. I'm Morgan Thomas. He is Alan Adams. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.